And welcome in, everybody. My name is Bryce Kuhn here on the Crowded Booth as we get ready for another edition of Talking Tuesdays, where we open up the show to the fans, to the people. Last week, and Will knows this, Will's in the background. Last week, I could barely stay on camera. I was laughing so hard, and it was a wild time. And I've got a feeling tonight's going to be very interesting. So make sure you like the video. Make sure you subscribe to the channel. It's Tuesday night, Talking Tuesday. We hear from you here on the Crowded Booth. We'll see you in about, I don't know, let's say 30 seconds, 23 maybe.
Pile in here and make yourself feel at home. The Crowded Booth is coming on. The Crowded Booth with Bryce Kuhn.
Well, welcome in. Welcome in. My name is Bryce Kuhn alongside Will Manis, a special guest in the background as we get ready for Talking Tuesday. Will, you couldn't be on the show last night. You got the internet to work. How are you feeling as we get ramped up to talk to people for about an hour? I see the comments section is having fun already. How are you feeling? Because we got some new callers on the line. Ralph might grace us, but we also do have a special guest in the wings that will be a lot of fun. Gavin says boo, but it is what it is.
Getting booed already.
How are you feeling?
I'm just happy to be back online. I mean, my internet was giving me problems for about 24 hours. I don't know what was going on. I think the hurricane started it, and I didn't know how to get it back on. So, yeah, maybe I should go to dial-up. I might know how to work dial-up better than whatever it is that I have now. I don't even know what it's called.
This kid that's named after a dog that I used to have says, hello, Will Manus. Man couldn't log on to AOL, Matt says. Okay, well, tonight we're opening up the phone lines. We're going to put the number up here in a second. But before we do, Sawyer says, shout me out. We just did.
Sawyer.
That's my dog, our old dog calling from Fort Mitchell, Alabama. That's Pablo's son. Did you get it? You get it. Okay, before we get into this, special guest on the line. Let's bring him in. We're going to talk a little college football with him tonight. And he was one of the OGs of the show, by the way. The first guest. The first ever guest. He made it before Vince Dooley, which the Georgia Tech fans have a massive problem with. But it is what it is. Welcoming onto the stage, we have Mr. John Kuhn, the man responsible for, I don't want to say a lot of the things that I have done, because people will take that as like something that's weird. And we don't need to be doing that. But how are you doing from the confines of my kitchen table?
I'm doing well. Glad to be here.
Oh, God. Well, that sounds awful. and
Can you hear me?
Wait. We can't. Can you hear him, Will?
Yeah, I can hear him.
You can hear him, and it sounds clear.
There was some static, but I can hear him.
Try talking again. Let's troubleshoot this live.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Okay, let's do this. You see the cord on the side of the computer? Let's unplug that. And Matt says ET phone home over there because that was not working. Unplug that, plug it back in. Will, you might have to carry the show here for a second while I go in there. All right, let's try this again. Can you hit that unmute? Gavin says electrocuted. Hit that unmute button on your try talking now.
Can you hear me now?
Why does that sound like that?
Static. It was not doing this before the show started.
It was not. We tested this. That's why we had a 47 minutes. So, Will, you take the show real quick, and I'll figure this out. Just talk about.
All right. We don't have the phone lines open. I can't even open them up because Bryce has total control of that. Sawyer, here's your shout out. You've been begging enough. So there you go. Shout me other. Yeah. Well, you got your shout out. Call-ins are coming. Sam Lord is here. Sam with the call of the week last week. Sam, are you going to call back in this week? Are you going to give us another great call?
All right, let's try this again. Let's try this again real quick. All right, try talking again.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Can you hear me?
Way better. Way better.
Good.
Okay, that's way better. We're in the middle of formulating our question. Sam is required to call in.
Sam, you better hurry up and have your question.
You better do that. We're going to go ahead and what we're going to do. He's in our kitchen table. My mother and my wife and my child are also, I think, in there. So we're going to mute him when he's not talking. So, yeah, and this dog just keeps saying your name over and over again. So, without further ado, we're going to open up the phone lines here. If you have not already, we had 4 people call over the weekend, and this is connected to my personal phone, and I picked it up. Shouldn't have, but I did. We've already got someone who called the line, which means Will obviously gave them the number beforehand, but that's okay. Tonight, we're talking college football. Anything that you want to talk about college football-wise, we'll take your call, we'll listen to it, and then we will react if we have time, because obviously, like you said, and here we go. First caller of the evening. Let's go ahead and dial it in here. Thanks so much for calling in. What's your name? Oh, thanks so much for calling in. Where are you calling from?
My name's Daryl, and I'm from St. Louis, Missouri.
All right, Daryl, what you got for us?
I was wondering, did you coach for St. Louis baseball?
What are we doing here? What do we do? Do you have a legitimate question here?
I was wondering because my nephew at whatever it was, Mobile, Columbus. I don't even know.
Do you have a question, or are you just gonna what's the deal here?
Yeah. 2 things. One, do you think Alabama is a real national contender?
Okay. What's the second one?
And do you let it crust?
Okay, we're getting off.
Don't acknowledge the second question.
Yeah, we're going to hand it to we're going to hand it to the expert here. Matt says, well, they are number 2 in the country. We'll start off with you, John. Is Alabama a national contender? I think it's pretty easy to say so.
Oh, definitely, yes. With the running quarterback and a guy that can throw it, yeah, they're going to be trouble for all the teams they got to play this year. So my vote is yes.
All right, John says yes. We're gonna open back the phone line here, and thanks so much for calling in. I'm pretty sure this is the same person from a different phone. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
Hello, I'm from Texas.
Well, what?
And I was wondering if you heard of Zach Tustin. And do you think the glaze on Ryan?
Yeah. Okay. So it's here for us. That's the question. Ryan Williams. Yes, we know he's 17 years old. Yes, we know that this is a guy who, not only look. Well, you can talk about it. It was emotional for you that he got away from Auburn. He's legit. He's miraculous catch. Not really, because he would have wasted his opportunity there with Peyton Thorne. Your thoughts, Ryan Williams? Go ahead, because you didn't get to be on the show last night. So talk to us.
I mean, has a freshman ever won the Biletnikoff Award? Because I think that's what we're headed towards here with him. He's that good. I actually used to work with his uncle before I changed jobs today. I worked with his uncle, and the family says it's not whether he's going to be an NFL player. It's what is he going to be an NFL Hall of Famer. So that's the direction, the path he's on. That's who he has around him. So he's definitely going to be doing great things, and if he stays healthy, he'll have some awards to go with it this year.
Yeah, I mean, look, he's really good. The way that he used his body in that game, that's ridiculous. That's kids. I mean, we know he's 17 years old. Obviously, won in the football game. Let's go back over to John here. You got to watch the game. You got to see the final play. Freshman receiver from Saraland, Alabama. You watched it from a hotel in Saraland, Alabama. It was pretty rowdy. People were excited about it. Heartbreak for Georgia fans, but that kid's pretty exciting.
Oh yeah, I think he's. Alabama's had a long line of great receivers, so he's definitely probably going to be the best that's ever come out of there. To get him letting a cough in a freshman year, that would be. Yeah, I think he's well worthy of that.
Also, too, with Ryan Williams, we did a piece for CBS and 24/7 yesterday, and where a bunch of us had to come together and kind of write what was the recruiting pitch for him. This is a kid who reclassified. which he was supposed to be a 2025 recruit. 2024, he dropped down from being the number one player. Will, I believe I told you, and excuse me, had to sneeze there for a second. I hope this is a legitimate caller that we're about to bring on the line here, because if it isn't, we're shutting the phone lines down. I don't believe it is, but I'm gonna go ahead and take the chance here. All right, what's your name? Where are you calling from?
From Georgia.
Yeah. Okay. So we're not listening to that. 4 people night together. So, what are my thoughts on Saraland, Alabama? It has an amazing. It has a great public. We've got other. What?
Hey, Bryce, can you hear me?
Yes. Hello.
Hey, Bryce, this is Matt from Social Circle, Georgia. How you doing?
I'm doing fantastic, Matt. What do you have for us here?
So let's talk about NIL.
All right.
So what are y'all's thoughts about maybe some players are getting paid just because of their rankings and a lot of players getting overlooked? And I guess what I'm trying to get at there is there may be a lot of players that can contribute more to teams, that teams can recruit to, college football is crazy, but it seems like this year, NIL is the third year of NIL. And, you got your Georgias, your Alabamas, your Ohio State, Penn State, your big teams. But do you think NIL is really going to separate teams in the long run, or do you think maybe it's just going to be a cash grab just to get the highest recruited players, or the highest ranked players, I should say?
Good question. We're going to put you on hold while we answer this, because we might have some more thoughts from you. So I'm going to put him on hold here real quick, because I think this is important. Let's talk about this. Obviously, we have, and this is not to date anyone, but this is someone that's sitting on my left, I guess I would say, who lives in a world of college football where it should be amateurism. It's amateurism. I think that's where you sit. We've gotten so far that we're paying high school kids, especially over in the state of Georgia, now that it's legal. Going off recruiting rankings, I work for a company that is literally what they do. They go out, they evaluate these kids. They go out and they not only just evaluate, but they now pen an NIL valuation that goes along with it. It's kind of like in the NFL draft, where we see guys, line off for just 1 second, but it's kind of like an NFL draft where your draft slot comes with an amount of money. So we'll start with John here. Are we going to run into a problem where kids are not being properly evaluated? They get to campus and you've already promised a certain amount of money to them. And how do you back out of that without some type of employer-employee contract? So we'll start with you. How does that work? Are we heading that way?
I think so. I mean, there's just so much money in college football. There's got to be some type of regulations on it, maybe a salary cap. I don't know. Just like you say, you promise these kids a lot of things, a lot of money before they even get there. What was the guy from the University of Florida, the quarterback that never played a down and got?
Oh, and now he's at Georgia. Jaden Rashada, who he's a couple million, I think it was.
I mean, it's not like, if you graduate from college and you're going to get a job, you'll get a signing bonus, maybe $5,000, $10,000, but you really got to prove yourself once you get there. It's kind of a little bit backwards to me. I can understand. I think they deserve, because they're bringing the money into the school, but I don't know. I think it's getting a little bit out of hand.
Well, the numbers, much like NBA contracts, much like NFL contracts, it's gotten so inflated now that I don't know if there's a true valuation. Will, are we running into a problem here where, let's say that, let's go, for example, 24/7, the top 32 players are 5 stars. It's supposed to be representative of where they think let's say where it's supposed to be representative of where they think the first 32 picks in the NFL draft are going to go. Are we running into an issue where guys are just going to be slotted in that based off of that recruiting valuation? I mean, I feel like that's where we're headed, but I think it's also up to the schools to be able to say, okay, we think this guy is probably the 30th best player, where they're, another team thinks they're the 16th best player, and that's how these bidding wars start.
Yeah, well, I mean, as long as your recruiting evaluation websites remain independent and not affiliated with the NCAA or a conference or even schools, I don't know that it's really going to change anything. And also, I mean, if you're talking about a 5-star guy, does it really matter? I mean, everybody gets evaluations wrong all the time, and that's up to the school or the collective, to commit that money to a player. But what really worries me is if we get down to 4 stars and 3 stars, and we're not football coaches aren't doing the evaluations anymore. They're just, like you're saying, you put a dollar number on where they're ranked in recruiting, and then that's just what they get paid. And then you're going to have a lot of sore fans and sore boosters, because nobody's evaluating. They're just trusting this independent site to do that. And then if that's what's going to happen 24/7 on 3, ESPN's recruiting arms, they're going to be bought out by conferences, or probably by conferences at this point. And kids are being recruited, which it's a conspiracy that they do this already. But like, once you get an Alabama offer, it used to be, oh, he's got to be a 5-star if Alabama wants him. So that's what it'll look like. But I don't know that it really matters. I mean, because evaluations are wrong all the time.
They're wrong, and I will say you've seen some people bleed over from the 24/7 world over into player personnel, in terms of evaluating staff. I think that's helpful. But I will sit here and say, like, the exact company that I work for, I don't even believe all of the evaluations and all the rankings that they have. I mean, I've seen some of these kids play in person. We've got a very enthusiastic listener of our show that is adamant that 5-star defensive lineman Justice Terry out of Manchester High School is soft and he's terrible. And he just continues to say that every single show and every single episode. But this is a kid who's been, and Dad, I know that was a family member that played with him. That kid was literally the size that he is when he was in 8th grade. I mean, he's been that big for a long time. So that is what it is. All right, let's go to the next call here. That's a good question. That's the kind of questions we need here. I hope this is real. Thanks so much. All right, let's go to the next call here. That's a good one. Can we kind of show down? Thank you. Thanks for calling in. What's your name? Where are you calling from? And he just hung up. This person just got mad and I guess hung up because I yelled at him. Off of that, you're going to have misevaluations. Are you the question I think becomes then into what these teams are doing. Are you going to? We had to pay this kid $3, and we are tied to that for the duration of his contract. Let's get to another caller. Here we go. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
This is Dr. Bob from East Baton Rouge Parish, Louisiana.
Smartest man alive, Dr. Bob. What you got for us on this fine Tuesday evening? 1st of October, by the way.
It is the 1st of October. It's starting to get a little bit cooler. I think we were only up to 88 today in Baton Rouge.
I only sweat a little bit today. It was nice.
Yeah, well, I'll just say that you missed a hot one this past Saturday down there at Ullman Stadium. I thought I was going to get cooked alive out there.
Well, Ralph made the trip down to Baton Rouge, and we enjoyed a beautiful Saturday night in Death Valley. It was a crisp 74 degrees. It was awesome. It was awesome. It was really great.
Yeah, that was a great day in football for the Louisiana schools. LSU, Tulane both won big, and even little old Louisiana Lafayette went up to Winston-Salem and got them a win this weekend. So it's good times to be a fan of Louisiana college football.
That is true. What you got for us on this fine evening? What you want to talk about?
Well, I was just thinking about the Georgia Tech Duke game this week, since I have affiliations with both schools, and I listened to your Behind Enemy Lines podcast, and I will say that the guy that you brought on talking about Duke, I think, represented the school and the fan base well. I think he's one of the best guests that you've had on so far. Very analytical, very technical. I liked his breakdown of where he sees the game this weekend, and I think we're going to have a pretty competitive football game this Saturday.
Yeah, I would agree. I would agree with that point. Now, I kind of wanted to bring this up too. I mean, this is a must-win game It feels like for Georgia Tech, you got it. You're coming out of a bye week. You're well rested. Yeah, you played the first 5 weeks or 6 weeks of the season, however you want to look at it, and now you have to go. You have to go win this football game. It's not an option in terms of bowl eligibility, in terms of the image of the program. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I think so. Especially since Duke is a quality team, and this is a quality in-conference opponent, but it's a team that I will say, following both programs closely, while Duke may have more talented players in spots, I think overall Tech's roster is better, and you're playing at home. And even though Duke has been running the football better the past few weeks, I don't know how much of that is the fact that I think Carolina has a very suspect defense with a certain coach running their defense these days. And, when you're playing teams like UConn and Middle Tennessee State, while Duke is taking care of business, they almost got upset by Connecticut a couple weeks ago. And it's definitely a team that now, looking at their program, Mike Elko obviously did a bang-up job, and we are benefiting from two of his assistant coaches being on our staff now. But they lost a lot of guys, as your guest mentioned, especially along that defensive front. So I think this is a Saturday where Tech's offensive line, very similar to what we did in the FSU game, needs to come in and try to impose its will. And we need to start getting, Jamal Haynes and, an emerging Trelane Maddox, and some of those guys, is a little bit more involved in the offensive game plan. Felt we tried to do that a little bit early against Louisville, but got away from it. And to Louisville's credit, we were trying to run up the middle and it just wasn't working. And we just didn't adjust around that. But I think that, I think about a 7-point line is probably about where I'd have this game. And I'm excited to see us coming off a bye week. And hopefully we come out energetic, having played all those games at the beginning of the year, not really getting a break, getting a chance to get back home, get in front of our home crowd on a Saturday night, and go out and get a win against a quality Duke opponent.
No, you're exactly right. Before I get you out of here, Dr. Bob, do you want to pump up our boy Will for getting out of the loss column this week?
Well, I told him, if we're talking about hashtag the Manus March for the rest of the season, he needs to go heavy in on the service academies, Rutgers, and Iowa. Those are the teams that he needs to bet on for the rest of the year. I mean, real sickos committee stuff to get back into contention for this Best Bets title in 2024.
Yeah, defending champion. Dr. Bob, we appreciate you, man. Thanks for calling.
All right, thanks so much, Bryce. You have a good night.
Will, if you weren't here, obviously every single week we pick a game against the spread. Ralph's 3-2. I'm 2-4. But now he's obviously. All right, we get another call. What's your name and where you?
Hello? I'm Sawyer, and I'm from Columbus. And how do you feel about Carson Beck as a quarterback and how he compares to Jalen Milroe?
Okay, great question. Let's talk about it. All right. The expert, Jonesy does go ask, he goes, is the new guy in the movie The Sound of Freedom? I don't believe he is. I don't think that he made the cut for that one, but it is very interesting to, I guess, I have no idea. I don't know. It's very interesting. He also asks, this is the comment of the night, by the way. He goes, wow, Ralph looks like an Army Ranger. And then Clayton says, Ralph saw that loss to ULM for Troy and decided to just enlist. That's great. That's great. Hasn't been on the show in like 2 weeks, but it is what it is. Okay, go back to John here. Carson Beck. Look, you got a lot of big fans watching tonight, so they're going to disagree with whatever you have to say. Carson Beck did not look good. He is part of the reason they were able to come back, though. His worst game in a Georgia uniform, but also a lot of things that I think looked fairly impressive that you can move forward with if you're a Georgia fan.
Yeah, I think Carson may have been a little bit distracted the first half. I've heard rumors of his off the field. I guess his girlfriend, whatever. Did he have a girlfriend that's like?
Where did you hear this? Like, where did you find this? By the way,
I read it somewhere. Like
his girlfriend is a completely Miami basketball player, completely TikTok famous. I did not block your number, but yeah. And then we're not going to put that on. Well, we'll put it on for just half a second. Jonesy says that right there. But your thoughts? You think he's a little bit distracted, not all the way bought in? This should have gotten his attention.
I think so. I think he's going to be a different player. I mean, I'm glad to see that he came back in the second half and really had a bit better focus, and they adjusted well. And I think this kind of woke him up. I hope it did.
I think it might have woke the whole team up. Honestly,
yeah.
I mean, you can't.
I feel sorry for the brothers from the Plains this weekend. It may be.
Oh, Will, do you even want to talk about it? Or are you just?
I think Peyton Thorne's still throwing interception.
Did I comment on the show last night? I can't remember if I did, but you should put your daughter's entire college fund on Georgia's, 23.5. I think you should. Yeah, I mean, I think I said it like back in the summer. I mean, if Georgia lost to Alabama, it's a bad time for Auburn to play them. It was bad for Auburn to play Georgia after Georgia played Alabama.
It's also homecoming in Athens this weekend, which is going to be a whole more influx of those things.
Yeah.
Charlie Peak says Carson Beck is the best quarterback in the nation. Clayton says, I wonder if Carson sends in your Snapchats. Wild time. No, look, I think Carson Beck's a good quarterback. He's obviously going to slide down the draft boards. This is kind of a weird year of the quarterback in terms of what you have in the college game. Shedeur Sanders, I talked about him last night in Colorado. Regardless of what you think about Deion Sanders and what they've been able to do, that was a massive win. And not just that they beat UCF, but the fashion that they beat them. I mean, that they looked like for
what
the
did I
first
say
time
before
in the
that
program.
game?
Yeah, you said this is a game Gus loses.
Yeah, it's a game he loses.
Mm-hmm. Josie says, even if UGA won, it's a bad time for that single A football team in Auburn.
JV. Not even single A, JV.
Just straight up JV. All right, we're going to open back up the phone lines because we got to talk a little bit about something here. Sam, get your call back in. I don't know. Yeah, okay. We'll see if this is real. All right, here we go. Buckle up, everyone. Here we go.
Hello, Bryce. Bryce.
What's your name? Where are you calling from?
My name is Sam. I'm everyone's favorite caller.
You stole the show last night, pal.
I know. And I'm back. I'm back again, baby. So look, I got a question about kind of back on Carson Beck compared to Milroe type deal. Carson Beck starts the season this upcoming preseason, starts the season ranked as quarterback 1 on a lot of draft boards. Mm-hmm. And everyone's kind of like holding their breath. We knew the processor he was, we knew the arm talent, we knew all that, but we were kind of asking the question around, okay, well, what is he like against Alabama when he has this redemption shot at Alabama? And I was just wondering, one, how does this affect his stock, this loss, especially when it wasn't a clean game by him and the first half looked very horrendous? Do you toss the tape out? What do you do? But 2, how does this affect the Heisman race where you have him second and now Milroe is on pace to beat Lamar Jackson's record? Mm-hmm. And then 3, how is this going to look when Georgia loses to Tennessee and Texas and their path to the playoff?
Well, I'll tell you this. I do think if there's a 3-loss team, Sam, that can get in, it's going to be Georgia because of their strength of schedule, because the fact that they still have to play Tennessee, who, I mean, I know you're a Tennessee fan, has exceeded the level of expectation, I think, nationally. I mean, within that fan base, I think there's a lot of things that y'all thought could happen. But just from a national perspective, I do think that they've exceeded the expectations of what they could be so far. So the goalposts are going to be moved a little bit further back for Tennessee this year. But, yeah, if they lose to Tennessee, they lose to Texas, I think they got to win one of those. I don't think you can just beat Ole Miss. It's going to be interesting, though, because, can kind of take your first question there. let's talk about, and I'm going to put you on hold real quick, and we'll bring you right back in because I want to get the group's opinion on this. So
Okay.
let's talk about this. Carson Beck's draft stock. We all sit here and we know that the NFL draft is based completely off of potential. A lot of times guys are drafted based off what they think they can do at the next level, regardless of the production. The best example of that is Travon Walker getting drafted, the Georgia, rushing linebacker, defensive end, number 1 overall by the Jags. What was it, 2-3 years ago?
Yeah, I got
Didn't
a
put up a
quarterback
lot of college
example.
stats.
I got a quarterback example for you. Will Levis.
Yes, Will
solely
Levis.
drafted off potential and traits, and he's been a disaster.
Yeah. So Carson Beck, draft stock. Is he still one of the top quarterbacks available? How much does this damage it? We'll go back to John.
Who's first?
I don't think he heard me. We'll go back to we'll go back to the man in the kitchen.
Carson Beck, I mean, if you throw for over 3,000 yards in the SEC, I think your stock is pretty good in the NFL. I think he'll be put in a system. He kind of reminds me a little bit of who's the Chargers quarterback?
Herbert.
Justin Herbert.
Mm-hmm. I think he's kind of got that build about him. So, and he can move in the pocket. I mean, he can run when he has to. He's got long strides. So, yeah, his stock probably maybe went down, but still, he's gonna be a top draft, I think, when it comes NFL time.
Well, and also too, let's add to that real quick, and I'll put you on mute because I hear my child screaming in the background. Let's talk about that. Remember the run on quarterbacks the NFL draft went on this past year, where Bo Nix got selected in the top 15 picks, and people were like, "That's a second round quarterback." Now he's playing very well so far for Denver to start the season, but you remember if Sunday was ugly. He's played. I would say he's played better than I thought he would, honestly, just in terms of that.
He has.
But if some team like the Atlanta Falcons did this past year, reaches up and takes a quarterback, or someone does that at 8 or 9, and then you start to see teams panic, Carson Beck's going to be one of the top 5 quarterbacks taken off the board, regardless of where that is, if it's a fringe second round, wherever it is. A couple comments. Clayton says, very mediocre articulated question by Sam, great improvement. Jonesy says, just put 12 SEC teams in the playoff. Let's see what happened. And he goes, oh, John Kuhn is Bruce's younger brother. No, that's my father, but I do appreciate that, Jonesy. Gavin says, check down Beck is just Tannehill. Yeah, it is what it is.
Look,
Will, a couple thoughts before we bring Sam back.
If Carson Beck has a career like Ryan Tannehill, I'd say that's pretty good.
Tannehill
hadn't won a ton.
10 years?
Yeah, he played a long time. Had a couple really good years. Just didn't do a ton in the playoffs, but I think Carson Beck, he'll be one of the top 3 quarterbacks taken in the draft, even after Saturday's game. I don't think it changes a whole lot.
I agree. All right, Sam, you're back on the line. We took you off hold there. Kind of your thoughts on where you were going with that.
Yeah. So, after listening to this, I do agree. Saturday's game might not affect it, but also at the same time, I could see a lot of people saying this is the best he's seen, and the best he's seen has whooped him twice now. And on top of that, it also begs the question of who is he without Bowers and McConkey when it comes to top end competition? Because there were times Saturday he looked rather. I just saw Clayton's comment. Sorry. So he looked rather lost, and his body language seemed pretty shocked and scared, almost like he had been popped one good time and wasn't quite ready. I like the comparison to Justin Herbert because of how they both process the game, but ultimately I think that there's a concern there.
Yeah, I'll add to this real quick. And Charlie Peak says Walter Blanchard equals Lad McConkey. I'll add to this. Something has to be said about the fact that he struggled against arguably one of the best teams in college football over the past 2 years, right? Like, we can all sit there and say that. However, if you kind of take a step back, he's dominated other competition. Now, the question is that does the logo on the helmet, do the weapons around him, is that just what has helped him be good? Sam, I could turn around, and I said this on last night's show, without the weapons and without the team that he's on, I think we'd be having the same conversation about Jalen Milroe. And I think that penalizing a quarterback for being on a great team, while you do have to kind of read in between the lines, I think people do tend to get a little harsh on that grade. Because if you took Jalen Milroe and put him on, and I said this the other night, Western Kentucky, he's not doing what he's done. He does there. The fact that they've surrounded him with great weapons helps him be the quarterback that he is. That's the problem we see with a lot of the young quarterbacks when they go into the draft, i.e. Bryce Young in Carolina, who hasn't been good, but also they didn't give him anything to work with. They struggle because it's a completely new environment that they dropped them in from being with or surrounded by all these weapons to going into a situation where they have absolutely nothing in a bad offensive line.
Yeah, I think that's ultimately a fair comparison. I think you're right that a lot of people do hold maybe too much against quarterbacks that play on great teams. After all, I mean, we've seen it happen even in the NFL with Brock Purdy and Jalen Hurts 2 years ago. I was just curious to just get your thoughts on that. Thanks for taking my call, Bryce.
Oh, of course, Sam. And hey, way to articulate your question this week. Yeah, last week was a little bit of a doozy, but we do appreciate it.
I was nervous, and Jonesy was making fun of me. It was a scary time. It was a scary time.
It was. We appreciate it, though. That's Sam. That's a good conversation.
I mean, talking about Carson Beck on Saturday, I think we got to remember Georgia's number one offensive lineman, arguably, was out, injured. Tate Ratledge out, injured. What happened?
Okay. You're going speed round again on us.
Oh, my bad. Sorry.
No, you're good. Keep going. Keep going.
Tate Ratledge out. And then Georgia, they do lack playmakers on the outside, especially compared to what they had last year. No Brock Bowers, no Ladd McConkey. That's 2 first round. McConkey was pick 33. 2 first round talents at receiver. And Georgia just doesn't have that this year. So obviously it's going to be harder on Carson Beck this year. And they still put up 34 points against Alabama on the road. I mean, the first half was very bad, but they fixed some things and put up some points. So I don't think it shouldn't affect the outlook of Beck that much.
Your thoughts? You were about to say something?
How many quarterbacks, though, you're talking about? Carson Beck has had trouble with Alabama two games in a row. But how many other quarterbacks have had trouble playing Alabama? I mean, number two for Alabama, finally figured out that pass, that back shoulder pass, that last play of the game. I mean, he'd been beat up all night long, and then he finally figured out, I got to turn around a little bit, see where this ball's at. So, of course, I was yelling at the TV, but I'm like, I wish we'd have done something a little bit different when you got 45 seconds and you're on the 20-yard line. I mean, the Lucky kid, number 7, the tight end.
Lawson Lucky, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, he's bigger than Bowers, isn't he? He's a big kid.
He's taller. Yeah, he's taller than Brock Bowers was.
I would have liked to have seen him coming across the middle or something, give us a little bit more time because, Alabama can score in like 5 seconds. I mean, run that clock all the way down. So that kid just finally figured it out on that play and said, I'm going to push him to the sideline and make sure that I turn around when he's going to throw that fade pass to the back shoulder. So.
Well, also into that point, the first interception was not on Beck. Arian Smith completely missed his assignment. And that has been, and we've had Palmer Toms on our show, covers Georgia for On 3 multiple times, and he has said kind of off air and a little bit on air at times, Will, and I know you know this, Arian Smith's biggest issue, number 11 for Georgia, is that he can't catch the football. He's fast as all get out, but he struggles with that.
Before that pick go right through his hands. Would have been a touchdown if he caught it.
And then he decides to run another go route on what is obviously either a hitch or a screen. And Beck, because people have to understand that round. Carson Beck played a nightmare game. Georgia played a nightmare first 25 minutes. That was the worst Georgia will play all year, in my opinion, in terms of what they're doing, especially against great teams. The read, Beck knows where he's going pre-snap. So when he takes that snap and he throws it out, he's expecting the guy to know what his job is. Arian Smith just takes off down the field. Like, go back and watch it. So the other interceptions were bad. This is what it is. Clayton says Carson Beck is still trash. I mean, he may not be the prettiest human being in the world, but he's definitely, it is what it is. I will open back up the phone lines here. Got about 20 more minutes here on the show. And, I think it's interesting. We talked a lot about Georgia, a little bit about Georgia Tech Duke. Before we get out of this, And I want to ask this, though. Here's a good question. I'm closing the phone lines again real quick because I want to ask this question. Obviously, my father's on the show tonight. He has a different, I don't want to say relationship, but he has a different viewpoint of Mike Bobo. You know, Mike Bobo's first go-around, Georgia fans were kind of ready to get rid of him. It became very predictable what he's going to do. Run the ball up the middle 2 times and then pass it. Mike Bobo, obviously the offensive coordinator after Todd Monken and his analyst, Buster Faulkner, now at Georgia Tech, Monken in the NFL. Your thoughts on Mike Bobo, what you've seen out of the play calling of him. How do you feel about it? Is it what we saw in the Mark Richt era and frustrating, or is this a different version of Mike Bobo?
I would probably say it's a different version, but sometimes I think he falls back into his old tendencies. I think sometimes he will, and it may just be because it's early in the season, he doesn't try a little bit more riskier things to do. And sometimes he falls back and he'll repeat things to the point where I'm just beating my head against the wall about, that don't work. I mean, if you run it 25 times and it works one time, is that one time worth all the other 1.5 yards you gained on those plays? Yeah, he frustrates me sometimes, but I mean, I think Monken was a better offensive coordinator.
Yeah.
But, and maybe he's not doing it because, like you say, he doesn't have the talent, or he doesn't think he has the talent like he's had before. Of course, the number 8, the receiver.
Dominic Lovett's a good football player. Oh, no, Colby Young, that receiver. That kid's a big kid.
6'4", 215. I mean,
yeah,
I think he could probably go up there and get it with anybody except for on that last play. I like him a little better. I'm not the biggest fan of his, but it is what it is.
Josie says that Bobo is a retread, and he thinks Georgia should have won and got a new voice in the room. And obviously, look, we also know Kirby Smart's close. Yeah, we always forget about the Mike Bobo tenure at Auburn.
Hey, look, if he doesn't throw a 50-50 ball to a 5'10" receiver and just gives the ball to the guy who, I think I'm going to get this stat right, leads the NFL in yards per carry right now, the ball inside the 5 against Penn State, Auburn beats Penn State.
Will never fails to bring up some type of Auburn moment, and it just frustrates him. Tank Bigsby, pretty good football
Mike
player.
Bobo. Brought up Mike Bobo.
Jonesy says, dude has to have naked pictures of everyone to keep a job. I don't know. That's you can tell my dad's never been on the show before in this capacity because this is different. Interesting.
He was in Kirby's wedding. They played together at Georgia. Who knows?
Well, and look, Kirby's established a staff of where he's got Will Muschamp, who stepped away. I think that's a bigger aspect than people are not talking about, by the way. Will Muschamp not being a part of the sort of staff anymore, I think we're seeing some bust of it. I don't love it. So Clayton says, if ands, butts were candies and nuts. If ands butts were candies and nuts, we'd all have a wonderful Christmas. Jonesy also says better than Will talking about soccer, which we almost talked a little bit about relegation tonight, but we decided not to. All right, open back up the phone lines. Make sure you get your calls in. If you're going to say something dumb, think about it before you say it. Let's try to keep that in mind. Mike Bobo and Georgia, real quick. I don't want to answer this phone call. If it's all right, give me 1 second. Let's see what we can do here. I don't want to answer the name. Give me 1 second. Let's see what we can do here. Hello? Let's see what we can do here. What's happening?
Hello.
Hello.
Bryce.
Can you turn the stream on?
What's happening? Hello. Hello.
I can hear you. You just got to mute the stream.
Bryce.
Yes.
What's up, Bryce?
What's up, Charlie? How you doing, brother? What you got for us tonight?
Who's talking to me?
I mean, we're just wasting time here. I don't understand what this is. I don't know what that was. Jones was getting very upset with that. don't want to answer this. I mean, this is not a real question. Hello, what's your name?
Hello.
Yes, what's your question? What you got for us?
Hello. So, I want to know how y'all feel about Michigan and how their rank should be.
What Michigan should be ranked?
Oh, and I'm Sawyer again.
Okay, we appreciate it, Sawyer. Thanks for calling in. Let's talk about it. Michigan, I didn't have my college football playoff. Will, we know how you feel about them. Let's go back to John. How do you feel about Michigan this year? No Harbaugh, not all the weapons that they had last year. You mentioned Alabama. They moved the ball in Alabama and Milroe last year. They don't have that this year. They did beat USC. I think they're a top 15 team.
Yeah, I'd put them at about 15. To me, they'll be on the outside looking in when it comes 12-team playoff time. Still can't get over the what's the coach's name for Michigan?
Sharon Moore.
Last year,
Jim Harbaugh.
Busted out when he was the interim coach for those couple of games.
Oh, when he started crying on live television?
Oh, I just can't get over that. But yeah, that's why I put him at number 15, maybe 16. I mean, they're just a big bunch of.
Watch it.
Yes.
Yeah, no,
they're always like they always have been. They're just big, corn-fed guys running the football. So,
yeah, it's just they're not dynamic.
I don't think they can do it. They're not dynamic. That's a good word for it.
It literally took, and Will, I want to get your thoughts. For Michigan last year, it literally took the perfect mix of veteran talent all coming together at the same time for them to win. They don't have a quarterback at all. At all, they don't have a quarterback, and they're bad at the quarterback.
Stealing signs.
That documentary is amazing, by the way. If you haven't had a chance to watch it over on Netflix, not a sponsor, but it's crazy. Will, any thoughts on Michigan? You think it's a top 15, top 20 team?
No, I don't. I think their defense might be that good, but their offense is really bad. It's bad. All they can do is run the ball. They don't have enough balance, I don't think. They were able to beat USC because we know USC is soft and they played them at home. And I think that's the difference. They have to make games ugly to win them. And the problem is, they're going to be ranked high and they're going to look good. And there's a chance they could back their way into the playoff, but they'll just get stomped by whoever they play. But it starts and ends with them on defense.
It starts and ends with them. Go ahead.
They'll win the total time of possession award this year. They'll probably hold the ball for 40 minutes. That's the only way they can, can do that. Like you said, the quarterback's not that great, or both of them.
They've already benched one, and the other. Alex Orgy's terrible. It's really, really bad. Donna Bob says Michigan's key game is against Oregon. Yeah, JJ was the biggest game manager of all time. He says, "Bring back Tom Brady," is what Sawyer says. Michigan is Iowa.
Michigan is what Iowa used to be.
I actually will ban people that talk about Iowa. All right, what's your name? Where are you calling from? I don't know what's happening.
Person that's asking about if you were the coach at something.
I don't know. Well, what's your name and where are you calling from?
Bryce.
I don't understand what's going on. What's your name and where are you calling from? Very simple. Introduce yourself.
My name is Zach from Columbus, Georgia. You already know me. And I was wondering if you had any thoughts about Ohio State and their elusive offense to win the Natty this year.
Great question, Zach. We appreciate you calling in. And yes, I don't. So don't take that the wrong way, but it is what it is. The Crowded Booth is a family-friendly channel. Jonesy says, "Don't we have an age limit?" All right, that's our last call. We're done for the night on calls. By the way, we're getting out of here with that. Let's answer this question. Then I've got one more in the chat that I want to get to. Okay. Ohio. How do we feel about them? Are they a legitimate title contender? I did state last night, I think it's one of the few teams that could do what Georgia did against Alabama in terms of being able to rally. I think they have that type of offensive firepower. But Will Howard did get hurt. I don't know to what extent on the starting quarterback, but they still have some weapons. How do we feel about it? Will, we'll let you take it first.
Well, they're certainly the front runner in the Big Ten. I think if they can win the Big Ten, they're certainly got a really good shot to win the national title. They'll probably get some rematches on the way that'll make it tough for them. But I think on paper they have the best roster. Everybody says they bought the best roster, but that's the nature of the game now. You have to do it. And if they don't do it this year, I think it's going to be the end of the road for Ryan Day. But I think I certainly think that they're going to be there at the end.
Yeah, I had them as a top 4 team. I actually had them winning the national championship. Back to you, Father. How do you feel about them with Ohio State there?
I really haven't paid attention to them. I really don't pay attention to them until about the 6th or 7th game of the year because they're playing Youngstown State and Kent State for about the first 5 games.
We don't talk about Kent State on this show, but I do.
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, they'll be well rested by the time it gets to playoff time. I mean, everybody should be back and not hurt. And they'll play maybe one meaningful game before they make it to, the second seed in the playoffs. Or maybe they'll probably be the first seed in the playoff because I don't think anybody's going to beat them.
Yeah, Oregon's not what I thought they were going to be. I think that they could put that. Josie's got a quick question for you there, John. He goes, John, what do you think of Iowa and the Iowa football program?
I mean, Iowa, I like them better than Michigan. I mean, Iowa is who they are. I mean, they just walk right out of the cornfield and say, we're going to run the ball 64 times, throw it twice, and I hope you can,
score and play some great defense.
And we'll beat you 9-7. And we'll win 10 games and we'll go to some bowl in Shreveport. So
that bowl in Shreveport does get pretty cold, by the way, I've been told. Okay, let's get last question here. I know. What are y'all's 3 expectations for Tech to round out the year? For folks that don't know, obviously I grew up a Georgia fan. They know that. They hold it against me. But my father used to be a Georgia Tech fan way back in the day. Dad, do you remember who was playing quarterback or the head coach at the time when you were like, hey, I'm going to be a Yellow Jacket fan?
Pepper Rogers was the coach. Bucky Schamberger was the quarterback. Eddie Lee Ivory, Randy Rhino. That's going back a little bit before my time. That's probably the 60s, early 70s. But oh yeah, I used to love Georgia Tech, but they'd come to the end of the year and Georgia would beat the crap out of them, or win by 1 point or something, and I just became a Bulldog fan. But if I had to put Georgia Tech, I'd say they may be 7-4 going into the Georgia game, and okay. I think they'll make it really competitive. Maybe really competitive for a few quarters. I don't think it'll be a blowout, but I think they'll play pretty hard. I think they're a better team, and the coach. I like the coach. I like Brent Key, and then there's not. Yeah, I mean, yes. I like him. So I think they're headed in the right direction, and it needs to be that way so that the end of the year, you have a meaningful game of in-state rivals.
Sam Lord says, I wouldn't hold it against you at all because, after all, Paul Johnson will be the namesake of the visitors' locker room soon. Yet Paul Johnson only beat Georgia in Athens. He couldn't do it in Atlanta, but he did it in Athens a lot of different times. Jonesy goes, John lost all credit with the Key comment. Jonesy's not a big fan of Brent Key. Will, I will say it. Matt says GT confirmed to win against Georgia. You heard it here first from John Kuhn. Dr. Bob says 7-5 with a chance at 8 in the bowl game. That's progress. That's progress after winning 9 games in 3 years. All right, Will, real quick. Your thoughts, Georgia Tech? It's a big one this week. Dr. Bob talked about it. They got to play Duke. Must win. You cannot lose this game if you want to get to bowl eligibility.
Yeah, well, we talked about before the year started, the 3 big games would probably be, the conference games or conference-ish games. Notre Dame, Miami, North Carolina, because we didn't think a whole lot about Duke, and now you throw Duke into that mix. I think Tech can split those games. Obviously, North Carolina's not nearly as good as we thought they might be. But I think Tech's going to beat one of Notre Dame or Miami. I really do. I think Brent Key gets them up for big games. I think he's still learning how to keep them up for the games that maybe aren't as big. But he's learning on the job, like we've talked about a lot. And I'm right with what we've all said, 7-5. I think that's where they'll be.
Yeah. Jonesy wants to know, what do you think of Brent Key?
I think he is learning quickly what a head coach has to do. He's still learning after a season and a half.
That's true. Sam Lord says, Tech fans, don't forget you got beat by Bowling Green just a year ago, and Bryce also got banned on YouTube and Twitch because of it. # Bryce Film Breakdown. That was a great one. It was a great film breakdown, but we can't use that. And Jonesy says Will is an idiot. So there we go. No, look, Georgia Tech, I want to go back real quick because because he can speak more to. You remember George Godsey, right? The quarterback. Like, how much better is it for, as now a Georgia fan, how much better is it for Georgia to, I've always said this, now this year it's going to be different. They're playing the Friday night after Thanksgiving in Athens, a night game prime time. That's really good for this rivalry in clean old fashioned hate. But for me, every single year growing up, when we would watch this game, it was, you're still slumbering out of your Thanksgiving leftover coma, watching this noon kickoff between Georgia Tech and Georgia. Really, we were all getting ready for the Iron Bowl at 3:30 on CBS and then whatever games were that night. So you tell the people, as a now Georgia fan, so many years later, how this game needs to be better for not just for Georgia fans, but just for the state of Georgia in general. What would you say to that?
Yeah, I mean, I think he has been in the right direction. He is learning very quickly how to be a good coach, how to keep this team up. I mean, and like Will said, I think one of the biggest things Georgia Tech has a problem with is playing as good as they need to on the teams that they really should beat. They have a track record of that in the past few years. But it's just good for the state of Georgia. I mean, hey, and I think it helps Georgia a little bit too. So it helps them concentrate more. Because I think maybe in the past few years they may have thought, we really don't have to play as hard as we have to against Georgia Tech because we've got the SEC championship game. Now they got to think about it a little bit more. Hopefully, if Key gets the Yellow Jackets up to that close to that caliber. So I would like to see it.
And it's kind of too, I mean, look, when they were running the triple option with Paul Johnson, it was always a thorn. Mark Richt always said that. Like, I remember Mark Richt literally always said, like, you have 1 week to game plan for this. You try to install a little bit throughout the season, but it's just this 1 week. It's a ridiculous offense in terms of what you have to play against. You're worried about getting hurt. And a lot of times Georgia was challenging for a spot in Atlanta. When Jeff Collins took over, 9 wins in 3 years, like you mentioned, the 45-0 beatdown that I took in Atlanta, the stadium was full of Georgia fans. It's good for the state of Georgia. It's good for high school recruiting. It's good for, in terms of this rivalry, being able to do that. So that's good stuff. Jonesy says, Bruce, you need your dad's haircut, not the comb over. Well, I do appreciate that. And he goes high and tight. He goes high and tight indeed. Hey, we appreciate you so much for watching. Special episode. Ralph couldn't make it in, but that's okay. Maybe one day he'll be back on the show. We don't know. But thanks so much. Like the video, subscribe to the channel. We will catch you tomorrow night. We'll be live 7:30 Central, 8:30 Eastern as we take a look at week number 6. Deep South's oldest rivalry. Will, you ready to talk about it?
No, not really.
Okay. Well, we'll try to. It'll be fun. See y'all later.
Pile in here and make yourself feel at home. The crowded booth is coming on. The Crowded Booth with Bryce Coon.